Ajay, the interconnect fee debate raging at the beginning of this year in newspaper wars across the country. How did you feel as a player and a viewer of the saga unfolding?
As a player, I must say that from the time we had come here as Neotel, I knew that the telecom pricing were very, very high in South Africa compared to other parts of the globe. And for any country to prosper and move forward, the telecommunications or IT or some of these pieces are like enablers. So it was not a sustainable story anyway for a longer period of time. As a player, I felt that the rates were too high and they needed to be brought down. In fact, in some of the areas, the rates were as high as by almost about 4 to 5 times of what it should be. And to borrow your word, how did I see this saga unfolding? I thought the players who needed to act should have taken more responsibility in guiding the process rather than, getting driven in a particular sense, so to speak. In other words, telecom liberalization, pricing, infrastructure, everything put together, I think the key focal pivot of this whole exercise is normally the regulator. And I think regulators should have taken charge and should have, if you ask me personally, should have completed the process in a fashion that this debate would have looked a little bit peripheral. Unfortunately, everything else became, right in the center, and the regulator's role became a little bit peripheral. So that to me was a bit disappointing, but I'm sure as long as the benefits are coming through and people have begun to pick up some of the positive points out of this exercise, I think it should be good for the industry.
Let's talk about ICASA, Independent Communications Authority of South Africa. There's a widespread criticism, and I've spoken to a number of the players in the telecommunications space, that the regulator simply does not have teeth. What's your opinion? My
personal opinion, as far as ICASA is concerned, has remained consistent ever since I've arrived here. I think any kind of issues or crisis presents itself with an opportunity. And I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for ICASA to do, as I call it, a leapfrog. Because whatever is being done here has been done many times over in other parts of the world. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, that also in a way guides you through the process of the issues surrounding the capacity and the capability side of that institution as well. So from my perspective, it's a perfect opportunity, or it was it has presented itself in many situations where the authority could have, taken a decision to leapfrog in all the areas, and that still exists today. So
the opportunity, in your opinion, isn't lost?
Not really. In fact, if at all anything, the opportunity for leapfrogging, nobody says that if you're jumping today a long jump of 6 feet, you can't jump 7 feet. So that opportunity will always be there. The target may shift, but then your effort should be to continue to see if you can leapfrog. And I think that is still existing today, be it in terms of technology leapfrog, be it in terms of some of the regulation side of it, be it in terms of even opening up of the sector that much more.
Do you think this is going to happen?
Well,
the opening up of the sector, let's start on that point.
Well, we would certainly, as a player from the industry and as someone who has seen the markets opening up, that's my greatest desire. Do I have hope? The answer is yes. Will it happen sooner than later? I hope so. And I think some of the right mix of people need to be brought in to give it a different sort of a flavor altogether. It need not be a classical, so to speak, a body where only the bookish side of the regulation is being seen, because today the biggest or the best regulators in the telecom field in the world are someone who are having more number of common people on their side and looking at things as to how the customers would look at it, rather than not from a ministry or a regulation, from a government perspective.
And as you say, you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
We
can take what has happened in other markets and apply the same principles in South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There are many such markets of similar GDP or similar GDP per capita, or similar age, or similar kind of size of the market. I think there are multiple parallels that can be drawn, and you could apply some of these principles. Forget about implementing all of them. Even if 2 or 3 key ones are implemented, I think that's a big signal into the market to say things are going to change in a slightly different tone.
Let's talk about undersea cables. You've got access to 4. Easy was landed in February 2010. It's to come on stream in August 2010. But your access to those 4 undersea cables, isn't that a competitive differentiator?
It is. In fact, I'm so pleased that you asked about it, because we brought in CCOM in fact, CCOM landed on our license. And not many people know that in last month and a half, the only existing submarine cable failed 2 or 3 times over, and the entire country was running on the redundant path. So which was like a music to our ears. And that's what you need as you move forward, because some of the latent needs of corporates, individual will begin to come out once we have more and more international bandwidth. So from our perspective, that's a strategic advantage, and that's why we have made sure that we would remain the only player to have access in all the 4 submarine cables that would be touching the shores of South Africa.
So that means Neotel clients aren't going to experience any dropout or fallout, ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, because of this, I mean, it's not a nice thing to say, but because of the fact that the existing submarine cable failed twice or thrice, a lot of corporates came running to us because we had an alternative. That's sort of good news that we had an alternative, so to speak. And I think as the traffic begins to grow up, even these two will be less for a growing economy. So you would have, many submarine cables coming in as well.
Ajay, when is the consumer in South Africa going to feel some relief? You've already admitted as a player in the space that costs are too high.
Yeah. The core issue is there are 3 components of any telecom services. First is the international bandwidth, which is what we are trying to sort it out through the submarine cables. And I think people have begun to see benefit of that. Prices have fallen almost by about 40 to 60% over last 7-8 months. Then the next component is what is called the national long distance network, which is where you're seeing this joint effort coming from
with MTN and Vodacom.
Then if you come closer to home, then you see what is called the metro network, which is within the city. But in spite and despite of all these 3 pieces falling in line, please do not forget that the crucial issue is the last mile access, which you call it, and for which we need a very substantive change in the regulation, which is the local loop unbundling, as we call it. In other words, if I have connected 50,000 subscribers, anybody and everybody in the industry should be able to use that last mile for offering their services. And likewise, if my competitor has 450,000 homes connected, I should be allowed to use it, that last mile connectivity. The moment we get that access issue sorted out, I think there will be a visible difference in terms of the common man, so to speak. In the absence of that not happening, I think we'll continue to do our wireless network growth, which we are doing, but obviously I cannot match up with the access network of Neotel versus what is already existing with the competitor that has been built over the last 3 or 4 decades.